Hi, my name is Laura Bernstein-Kurtycz. Thanks for coming today to my talk entitled Lack of Reinforcement is Hard to Bear, Assessing Affect in Grizzly Bears Using a Judgment Bias Task. Cognitive bias refers to the fact that humans and animals respond differently to cognitive tasks depending on how we feel. This is linked to optimism and pessimism. Anxious and depressed people are more likely to predict negative outcomes, and this has been shown in studies with animals. So animals in barren or unpredictable housing demonstrate more pessimistic biases, and animals in enriched environments demonstrate more positive or optimistic biases. This is still relatively new to zoos, but it's potentially very valuable as a way to look at positive welfare in zoo animals. And the way we often test this is through judgment bias tasks. So I'm going to explain how we do that. Basically, you can teach animals to discriminate between two ends of a spectrum, and you teach them two different behaviors, and they get two different rewards. So for example, we can use black and white. You see black on the right there. An animal could use their right paw to select black when they see black and receive a high value reward, such as meat. And then similarly, when they see white, they respond with their left paw and receive a lower value reward, in this case, grapes. Then, once they've learned those two different behaviors that receive those two different rewards, you show them something right in the middle that's ambiguous, in this case, gray. And you see what they do. When they see gray, do they think, oh, gray is like black, that's going to get me the high value reward, and they do that behavior? That would be the optimistic response. Or if they see gray, do they think, no, there's no way I'm getting anything good, that's like white, I'm going to get grapes, I better do left? That would be a pessimistic response. Now, I did this with a touch screen with grizzly bears. So there was no using of giant bear paws and bear claws on the screen. Instead of using right or left paw, we had right or left boxes, and the bears touched the screen with their tongue. And they selected either the right square when they saw black or the left square when they saw white. And if they picked the wrong square, they got no reward. And then when they saw gray, we were able to look at what they did. This study was conducted at Cleveland Metro Park Zoo with Cody and Cooper, two 9-year-old grizzly bears rescued from the wild. We used a 24-inch capacitive touchscreen. The capacitive coating allows for a little more moisture than your average touchscreen, and Inquisit 5 software. Training went from December 2019 to early 2020. Then due to the disruption of COVID-19, we had to pause for a few months and started up again in the summer. Training sessions included 10 trials, 5 black and 5 white, mixed together. Testing sessions then went from October to December and included those same 5 black and 5 white trials and also 3 gray trials, randomized together. In order to evaluate whether there were differences in affect between different conditions, we set up a 2x2 design, basically 4 different conditions in which to try to evoke different affect to see if the test could differentiate. So the first was a behind-the-scenes tour and a keeper training session in which the keepers reinforced certain behaviors with the bears. We predicted this would be the most positive, effective session. Next was a session that still involved keeper training, but did not have a behind-the-scenes tour. A session that did not have training, but did have a behind-the-scenes tour, and this was likely to violate the bears' expectations because when they saw the tour arrive, they would expect keeper training and reinforcement, and they didn't get it. And then finally, a control session with neither. So again, we predicted that the most positive would be the tour and the keeper training and reinforcement. The most aversive would be the tour without the keeper training and reinforcement. We also recorded behavior. This was recorded on an iPad before the test session during the condition and scored them for all occurrence sampling of frustration and displacement behaviors, such as head roll, interact with barrier, stand up, walk away, vocalize. These are just some pictures of what that looked like behind the scenes. This particular area, you can see this is an older habitat in the zoo, but this area, although the bears don't spend a lot of time there, is really good for training because it has this long wall. And this is taken during one of the sessions from a GoPro that I'm wearing. So this is at the beginning. You can see the keeper there. Now you can see Cooper looking at the screen. There are the 2 blue squares. Cooper has made his choice and is leaning forward. And Cooper has made his choice and is using his tongue to select the square. Okay, so what did we find? We're going to look at 3 different types of results. The proportion of optimistic responses, so choosing that right side square associated with black, and high value reward, speed of responses, and behavior. We can look at this by individual bear. We'll start with Cody. Cody's proportion of optimistic responses did not change across conditions. There are the 4 conditions on the x-axis. I'm going to add the little pictures there too from earlier just to help give you an extra visual. But as you can see, although there is some variation, there was no significant difference. He chose left or right equally, regardless of condition. Cody's response speeds also did not change across conditions. You can see here, again, those 4 different conditions on the x-axis. Although there is some variation, there were no significant differences between conditions. We are unable to examine Cooper's proportion of optimistic responses because Cooper developed a side bias and always chose the right no matter what. So whether he did not understand the contingency or whether he did and grapes simply weren't worth working for, I don't know. However, his response speed did change across conditions, suggesting that there was a change in his response across condition. Again, on the x-axis, you can see the 4 conditions. And here you'll notice that in the no reinforcement conditions, he responded significantly slower to the gray ambiguous trials than to black, which is the high value reward. However, in the reinforcement conditions, regardless of tour, he responded faster. In fact, there was no longer a difference between his speed and response to gray or to black, suggesting optimism. Both bears' frustration behaviors across conditions followed similar patterns. Cody and Cooper both trended towards significantly fewer frustration behaviors during the condition in which they trained with the keeper, but there was no tour. Also, they only head rolled during the condition we thought would be the most aversive, the no reinforcement, but there was the tour. So, did the test work? Partially. Cooper's change in response suggests that we did tap into some sort of underlying affect in his case. The fact that we only saw head rolls during the no reinforcement and tour condition is interesting because it may be that head rolls are a particularly sensitive behavior for us to look at when we're looking for changes in affect. They did not get up and start pacing, but head rolls are often associated with stereotypic behavior such as pacing, and that is what we did see. And I think this deserves further investigation. Unfortunately, the ambiguous stimulus part did not work for Cody. Whether that was because the conditions were not different enough from each other, I don't know. It could be that the enriching effect of the training and the testing simply washed out any affective differences we had evoked. There could be an effect of personality, and there could also be an effect of the time of year. Grizzly bears have particularly low motivation to feed in the winter, and that is when we ended up testing due to the disruption of the pandemic. It's possible if we had tested in the early fall, when they have a high food motivation, we might have seen different responses. And future studies should absolutely examine these avenues. I'm thankful to a huge number of people for helping make this happen. No one does anything alone, so I really appreciate everybody's support and help with this project. Any questions?